All right, we now welcome to the program NBA draft analyst, former NBA agent, and former Arizona basketball player Matt Babcock. Matt, it'd honestly be irresponsible of us if we didn't start with the biggest news in college basketball, and that is the cancellation of the NCAA tournament. I promise I'll ask more specific questions as this interview goes on, but to kick us off, can you just give us your initial thoughts on the decision and how you're feeling not only as a professional in this industry, but as a fan?
Yeah, I mean it's been a crazy few days. I mean to start off, I was supposed to be in New York for the Big East tournament right now, and then I was supposed to go to the Big Ten tournament tomorrow. So yeah, it was Monday night. I had all my bags packed. Was going on a big trip. Had a 7:30 a.m. flight, and my dad had called me that night. He works for the Milwaukee Bucks. He was going to the Big East tournament too. And he said, we got wind that a number of teams were pulling all their scouts off the road. And we both kind of got, a little nervous and decided to scratch the trip and push it back a day and see what was said. And obviously, as you guys have followed, I mean, it just escalated more and more. And the whole thing's scratched. As far as the decision goes, they've made the right decision. I thought it was kind of chaotic how it all went down. I thought it should have been, all of the conferences together and the NCAA sort of saying, hey, this is how we're taking this, and it just seemed pretty unorganized. But they needed to cancel this. We need to get ahead of this as a society and kind of get ahead of it.
So Matt, before we get into some specific questions about scouting and specific players that we want to talk about, would you mind sharing a little bit about your path, where you started, and how you ended up doing what you're doing now?
Yeah, sure. So I'll try and make a long story short. So important things. I grew up in a basketball family. My dad, my two uncles have all worked in the NBA for years. My oldest uncle Pete started working in the NBA in the late 70s, and it sort of been turned into a family business. My two cousins are coaches in the NBA. We all played in college on some level or another. And when I finished school, I had planned to be a coach or go into scouting like my dad, and just trying to find a job in basketball. And my first job was with a big sports agency. And it was still, I still didn't think I was going to work as an agent. I was doing all of their, I was helping Dave Yeager, who at the time was a D League, now G League head coach. We were doing all their pre-draft workouts. And so I did that. It was a summer internship. It was great. Took a assistant coaching position with a pro team in Italy. And then from there, I got offered a job with a big agency, moved back to LA. 10 years later, I'd been in the agency business and, talk to my wife and say, I'm just so sick of this. Like, I want to get back to doing more, basketball related things that I was, I felt I was born to do, growing up in my family, and made a drastic move and got out, sold off my agency, and started scouting for NBA scouting service called Marty Blake and Associates. I was just doing it on my own as volunteer scouting. And so what happened was I was doing that, really loved the scouting, knew that no matter what I was going to do next, like for the long term, I wanted to be involved in the draft and evaluating players. And during that time, I got approached by Sports Illustrated to write a series of stories, about the pre-draft process, as from an agent's perspective. And so I started doing that. I had a number of people call me, asking me for help, different agents and players just wanted to pick my brain. And it kind of got to the point where I was, sort of sick and working for free. So I started charging people and turned it into a consulting business. And, I did that, operate like that for a while and, put together this idea of like, hey, why don't I create my own entity and do all of those things under one umbrella and get some guys that are, have some NBA experience that are in between jobs to work with me and utilize the platform as well. And, launched Babcock Hoops, a little over a year ago and, sort of taken on a life of its own, but that's the long story, not quite as long as it could be.
Yeah, no, that's a tremendous journey there, Matt. It sounds like what a lineage, by the way. You said your cousin, your dad, your uncle. You guys are like the berries of front office / scouting basketball.
Yeah, no, we're running all over the place.
Yeah. So speaking of the draft and what you're preparing for with this abbreviated college basketball season, what does this mean for NBA ready players like a Vernon Carey or or any number one overall pick? What does this mean for NBA ready players in terms of declaring, training, entering off-season regiments and getting ready for this draft ultimately?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think every player and their circle, whether it's parents, coaches, or whatever, these are the conversations that are going to be going on over the next few days. Because what's going to happen is all of these agents have been knocking their doors down, and some players have been meeting with agents and coaches. Some wait till after the season, but I mean, we're here now. These agents are going to be ruthless trying to sign new clients, and I think there'll be a lot of players signing with agents quickly. Some guys will wait, but I actually think it would be wise to really aggressively attack the process of selecting an agent if you're for sure going to be in the draft, just to get organized. Because with this being such a unique year and so much uncertainty as far as how the pre-draft goes, I think you need to kind of get your ducks in a row and kind of put together some different contingency plans as far as, hey, if this happens, we're going to do this, and so on and so forth. And so having representation in place is important. So yeah, I'd expect that to happen quickly. And another part of that too is with the college season ending is I would imagine the coaching carousel is going to start like that too. I mean, there's that's a competitive business, and a lot of these schools are going to lose a lot of money. And so I mean, one coach gets fired, whoever is planning on firing their coach is probably going to happen quick so they could get their new guy.
So we're recording this. Obviously, this is Thursday night. I think this is probably going to drop at some point next week. It's been announced that the tournament is canceled about 3 or 4 hours ago. The question I want to ask you, there's always been talks of, a recency bias, and there's actually been a couple studies about it, about players' performances in March Madness and their ultimate draft position. I always go back and I think of Shabazz Napier. Would he have been drafted as high in 14 if he didn't carry his team to a title? How much do you value the performance of a player on the highest stage in a tournament when you are forecasting their performance at the next level?
Well, I think it's tough. I mean, I personally try and take it, each player on a case by case basis. I think a player that moves up, he's getting exposure in showing off the things that he can do. But I mean, sometimes the exposure backfires too. If a team goes deep in the tournament and the star player doesn't play well, he's being overexposed. And so it really depends on the player. I mean, I always, take the approach with guys, or when I was an agent, I take approach with guys. Okay, if you're not comfortable with what your market value is, let's go out and play. Let's not hide from different workouts. Let's not, dodge the live play at the combine. If you're a senior and you're not projected to be drafted, you need to go to Portsmouth. Different things like that. And it really just sort of depends on each player.
So, Matt, I want to transition back to your time as an agent. I think the biggest thing that I'm interested in is, who are some of the notable names that you represented?
Well, I worked for a number of different agents and agencies. I worked for some huge companies early on in my career, where I was sort of like a junior agent, secondary agent. And during that time, I mean, I've worked with everybody. Kevin Garnett, Chauncey Billups were the star names for one agency I worked for. Another, we had Jason Kidd, Paul Pierce. And then I took a partnership role with a slightly smaller agency where I was a little bit more involved with each guy. And we had a good group of guys too. Andrew Bogut, Peja Stojakovic, Gary Neal. I mean, we had like 10 guys, and I was pretty involved with that. We had Ron Artest, who's Meta World Peace now. And then when I went on my own, I got sick of the big agency stuff. The recruiting was brutal. You had to leverage yourself so much in that business. Just to sign a lottery pick, the amount of money it costs just to cover their training and just the basic needs. Not discussing anything like with a bribe or anything like that, but the initial investment in a rookie player was a lot, and I didn't feel that comfortable with it. The players union doesn't give you a ton of protection to keep your players, and so I kind of fell into a niche of recruiting and representing guys that were more of second round picks and fringe NBA players, and creating an infrastructure where I had somewhat of an import-export business internationally too. So I was representing European players that are coming to the NBA, and so I with that business model, I had to represent a lot more players. So we ended up having a lot, just not as many star players. I'm
glad you brought that up, because it's easy. It must be easy for an agent, especially a higher hire an agent higher in the echelon at CAA or Rock Nation to identify who the clear lottery players are. But I've always been drawn to those guys that are great college players, but don't necessarily have the NBA bodies or measurables. I'm thinking along the lines of like the Fred VanVleets, the Dellavedovas, TJ McConnells, Malcolm Brogdons, maybe even like a Draymond Green when he was pudgy at Michigan State. The diamonds and like everyone knows that they can play, but can it translate to the NBA level? Can you think, whether it's in your career or anyone that you watch playing throughout this year that could fall into that mold?
There's actually a handful of guys this year that are terrific college players that I'm questioning how they translate. And Peyton Pritchard at Oregon. I think he falls in that boat. He's not the quickest kid, but he's a player. And so it's one of these deals of, okay, if I'm looking at who's going to make it as far as like physical attributes, he's crossed off the list easily. But with him being such a tough, gutsy kid, he's hard to bet against. I think Cassius Winston falls in that category for Michigan State. Marcus Howard at Marquette. He's 5. They list him at 5'11", 180, and he's really a shooting guard. And so he is severely undersized. But that guy's proven he could fill it up. Does it translate? I don't know. But guys like this, it's it's an interesting evaluation because it's challenging. I think Miles Powell from Seton Hall, I think he falls in that too. And so, this year specifically, there's a lot of guys in that boat.
The compatibility between you and the Shark here, by the way, Shark, you said TJ McConnell. Obviously, that's our boy, being Arizona guys. And then Matt, I don't think you realize how much he loves Peyton Pritchard. He's been on the Peyton Pritchard wagon since what, August?
Yeah, I'm gonna pull that clip for a while and play it on loop. So I appreciate it, man.
All right, no, that's good. It's funny. He is very similar to TJ, but he shoots the ball better. I don't know if he's quite as quick as not like TJ is super quick, but I think Peyton's even a little slower footed than TJ. But Peyton can really stroke, and he's got deep range. That's which comes at a premium.
Well, I think he hit 3 or 4 daggers, maybe not necessarily game-winning shots, but 5-10 seconds left in the game clock, and he just that shot against Washington, I think, is probably on his highlight reel, number 1 there in Seattle. Sure. Yeah,
and if I remember correctly, I believe that he's got some stat like he won 4 state championships in high school. And so
I think
just a stud.
Yeah, I think it is true, and obviously, he's a 4-year starter at this point. He went to the Final Four his freshman year. He's tested. It's just a matter of whether or not he can actually cover Damian Lillard and other point guards at the next level.
Sure, and I think he needs to adjust his game a bit. He's a pretty ball dominant guy that's looking to score. I think he's going to need to kind of actually probably play a little bit more like TJ does. Where he has more of a balance of being a scorer and a distributor. Because at Oregon, he's their guy. He's looking to fill it up.
And Peyton Pritchard, if you take a step back and look at his career arc and the bookend of his career, he starts with a Final Four, and unfortunately, it ends so abruptly like this. Not many players are able to say that they've had such a unique collegiate career like Peyton.
Yeah, no kidding.
So the best thing at this point that we can do is speculate. And I suppose we would have been speculating regardless if the tournament was still being played. But what I want to ask you, Matt, is which mid-major outside of Dayton and San Diego State do you think could have made a Cinderella type run?
Oh boy, I don't know. I was going to say Dayton and San Diego State. So I don't know. I don't have anybody. No, nobody off the top of my head that I'm thinking, hey, that was the team that they're going to make a run. I think this year I was really looking forward to the tournament just because there is so much parity, and I think a lot of people have been negative about it and say, hey, we're missing some of these powerhouse teams. But to me, it's an opportunity to have more competitive games, and I'm a big fan of watching competitive basketball and watching guys get after it, and teams having some hope.
So I'm glad that question was asked, because this is one that I've always wondered about, how the professionals look at elite players at the college level. With the one and done rule being in place as it is right now, obviously these guys got to go to college or they have to go play overseas. But how do you evaluate an elite talent that plays for a bad team? So I'm talking kind of like Anthony Edwards on Georgia right now. He's going to be a top 5 pick at this point, but the team sucked. Ja Morant last year, he played on a probably even worse team, Murray State, and they were successful. But even if you go back a little further, you got Ben Simmons at LSU. They don't even make the tournament. Is that baked into the calculus at all, or how do you guys make an adjustment on that?
Yeah, I mean, again, going back to, looking at each case in a case-by-case manner, I mean, it's hard to just follow one blueprint like, hey, this is exactly how we're evaluating a game. You need to kind of adjust and adapt, with an evaluation process. And, Anthony Edwards is a perfect example there. I mean, I was with him in Maui for several days. I saw him at Memphis, and he, it was crazy. So we had – and I for whatever reason, he didn't do many of the high school events last year. So my first time seeing him live was in Maui, which is not usually the norm for a top kid coming out of high school. I usually see them at least once or twice. And so I went to Maui. He'd been struggling a little bit the first day. I mean, he was horrible, and didn't say anything verbally to anybody. But I was starting to think, like, man, I don't know. Like he doesn't look very good. Doesn't look like a top pick in the draft. And then the second game was against Michigan State. It was a really hyped up game. And first half, same thing. I mean, he was struggling, playing with no confidence. Decision making was bad. Bad team defender. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to have to drop this guy in the mock draft. And the second half, it was probably the best performance I'd ever seen from a college player ever. I think he had 33 points. I mean, he went off, and I'm sitting in the first row right behind. I think Jay Billis was doing the game, and I had a great tweet that pretty much went viral. A video of him hitting a deep three, and celebrating after, and it. Obviously, since then I've tracked him closely, and I've seen him play live again. He's just very up and down. I mean, he is not a finished product. Their team's not very good, like you mentioned. He's tough. I mean, he's gonna go in the top few picks just because of his upside. I mean, he's got prototypical, physical attributes, and he's got a tough shot making ability, puts it on the floor. But he's not a finished product. That there are some things that he needs to get better at. And so, like, when you have a lot of room for growth, there's a big what if there, because it's just like, okay, it's probably going to click. From my understanding, he's a good guy. It's probably going to click, but when there are things that have to click and they don't, now you've got some bust potential. And so he scares me a little bit. I mean, granted, he's probably going to be a 1, 2, or 3 pick. But it's challenging to evaluate a guy that's not on a very good team. That's not a finished product as well. I mean, going back to what you said about Ja Morant, I think the difference there is it was easy to see what he can do. I mean, he was killing it. I went and saw them play at Murray State, and I walked away. That was about as much fun as I've ever seen. As far as watching a prospect like that, I mean, he was off the hook. And aside from Anthony Edwards, that second half I saw in Maui, he's been very up and down. So, I don't know.
I'll tell you real quick that, our fan base is going to like you. We got a lot of Memphis Grizzly fans. So you're saying good things about Ja. You referenced Dave Yeager earlier in the show. They're going to like this interview right here.
All right, good.
Yeah. And going back to that Maui tournament, it stinks to say because we don't have any NCAA tournament, but that probably was the best tournament of the year with the amount of talent. You look at Kansas, who showed themselves even then and throughout the year that they were probably the best team in the country. Obi Toppin was there, and then of course Anthony Edwards. So that Maui Invitational had a lot of great talent.
No, you're absolutely right. It was funny. It was my first time ever going to the Maui Invitational, and probably my favorite event I've ever been to. And I mean, I'm going to try and go each year if the teams are, which they they always are. But if the teams make sense from a scouting standpoint, just a great trip. It was a lot of fun, and it's a small building. It's almost like a big high school gym, so it's not a bad seat in the place. And it was awesome.
How could you hate it? You're on vacation, essentially watching a game that you love. You gotta humor me here for a second, though. I went on an absolute tangent a couple episodes ago about hoops and nets, and I feel like the Lahaina Center is infamous for their buttery soft rims. Are they as soft and forgiving as people make it out to seem?
Oh yeah, for sure. Then I noticed that for sure. Yeah, there was a lot of shooters touch type makes in that tournament.
Yeah. So Matt, I want to pivot real quick. Is it fair to discuss his future with the team after what many are considering an underwhelming season and also the past 4 years being a bit underwhelming? What say you about Sean Miller's future?
This is a tough one. Obviously being growing up in Arizona, going there. I've got the basketball way of looking at it, and then the fan part of me looking at it. And it's Lute had things rolling so good. I mean, the expectations are so high at Arizona now. I don't feel like the program is where it was with Lute. I mean, my last year there was 04, 05. We lost in the Elite Eight. I personally thought we were the best team in the country, and God, we just can't get over the hump with Sean Miller. It seems like, and like this year, I mean, we've got if you look at my mock draft, we got 3 solid first round picks, and we only won 21 games, and that's frustrating. And I personally like Sean Miller. I know him a little bit, and I think he's a good coach. But I think this is his 11th year. I mean, I'm assuming he's getting some serious heat. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see him be fired. I'm not saying that is what should happen or what I want to happen. But it's this is Arizona. I mean, we're proud people. We need some results.
Right. And I'll defer to the Shark here for his question, but I think you're spot on. The only thing that irks me the most about the fan base right now is that it seems as if Sean Miller to them is beyond reproach in terms of questioning his future. I don't necessarily know if he should be fired. I don't know if I want him fired, but the fact that we can't even have that discussion is kind of it's outlandish to me, at least.
Well, sure. I think one part of it too, which is a slightly separate conversation, is I'm not sure that the Arizona program, athletics program in general, has quite as much money as everybody else thinks. This is not a big SEC football school, and so the basketball credibility is high, but I don't think the resources match, and that's a big part. Big issue as far as like the back end business of it is. I mean, when does his contract end? Do you know?
I have zero clue.
Yeah, I think he's got another year on his contract. So I'm assuming if they want him out, that's part of the conversation is, okay, who are we going to replace him with, and how much money is it going to cost? And so it's not always as simple as, all right, he hasn't been in the Final Four. We need a new guy. It's like, all right, well, who's the new guy, and how much does he cost, and how much money do we have to spend? And and those are all things I don't have the answer to, but I'm definitely watching very closely.
Yeah, so I mean, my question was going to kind of piggyback off that, and really, as we wrap up here, just for our listeners, the mock draft was mentioned here. BabcockHoops.com. We'll plug it for you afterwards. Right now, your top 3 are Wiseman, Anthony Edwards, and Obi Toppin. Pretty cool blog on there as well from the other contributors with your firm. But I want to ask you, so dream candidate, I guess, for Arizona. We had this conversation a few weeks ago. I'm not an Arizona guy, but I posited it to the other guys on the show. Would it be Chris Beard? Would it be Mark Few? Luke Walton? Who would be the dream candidate? And then I guess if you have a realistic target as well, assuming the buyout isn't going to completely hamstring the organization.
Yeah, no, I've had a lot of friends talk to me about this, and I've actually put a lot of thought into it. Two ones that I could see happening, or that I'd like to see happening, is one, I'd love to see them go get Billy Donovan, bring him back to college. I think Billy is just a ultimate professional. I think he's a great coach. He would be good. Another one that I would like to, because we all want Arizona guy, all of our U of A guys, we want an Arizona presence. I think a way of doing that, because other than Luke's got the credibility because he's been a head coach of the NBA team, but he's never been a coach in college. I think it'd be hard to just step in to a program like that where the expectations are so high. But Damon Stoudemire did a good job at Pacific this year, and a way of getting a guy like that, or Jason Terry, or one of these type names that aren't probably ready to take over the helm at a school like U of A. Go get a guy like John Beilein, give him a 2, 3, 4-year deal. Hire an Arizona guy to be his associate head coach with a transition plan to have him take over in a few years. Something like that would be pretty cool.
Yeah. Get John Beilein out of the cold weather, man. You got to get him out of Ann Arbor, Morgantown. Put him up in the foothills. Enjoy the nice 75-degree weather during the winter, right, man?
Absolutely. And that guy can coach. I don't care what happened in Cleveland. Watching his Michigan teams and his teams at West Virginia, that guy is a hell of a coach.
We're going to cut this part out because I want Beilein to go to Boston College, my alma mater. So, I don't want this getting any legs here.
All right. Fair enough.
Matt, we'll let you out on this one right here. We were looking at your bio at Arizona, and I got to tell you, man, that picture, you had a bit of flow with the curly locks. To quote John Rothstein, so much Chase Buttinger, in Matt Babcock. Is that fair to say?
Sure. Yeah, no, our whole team, we're a little grungy. We didn't cut our hair too much, and I didn't know we were having photos that day, and so I would have gotten a haircut. It wasn't usually that crazy, but now I'm a bald guy. I miss the locks.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you said grungy and didn't cut your hair because it segues perfectly into my last question. Were you on the team with Salim Stoudemire?
I was. Yeah, it was. So our starting lineup was Mustafa Shakur, Salim Stoudemire, Hassan Adams, Ivan Radenovich, and then Channing Frye.
Any hysterical Salim stories on the court, off the court that you can share?
Well, I mean, him in college. I mean, our team was so stacked. I don't think people realize or people forget how good he was in college. I mean, he was probably the best college player I had ever seen. Definitely the best college player I ever played against. And he was my workout partner. We were both undersized shooting guards, shooters. And God, he just used to murder me in our individual workouts. And our assistant coach that was designated to be our development coach, we always played cutthroat one-on-one, and loser had a run. And I ran a lot. Salim got me in great shape. I'll tell you that. And then what's funny is, after school, when I became an agent, I ended up being his agent, represent him for a couple years. And so, he and I were close friends in college, and then we, got another layer of closeness too afterwards.
For my money, the greatest shooter of all time in college basketball. Put his stats up against JJ.
Agreed.
All right, Matt. Well, hey, thank you so much for taking the time and chatting with us. A lot of great insight. Thank you, man.
No, thank you. Yeah, anytime.
All right. Have a great night.
You too.